before we go into a Q&A, I'm going to ask each one of you the same question. As a research advocate, how am I representing the patient voice? Who would like to start?
One of the things that we've been doing in the last 4 or 5 years is to represent the patient voice when we go make a presentation. And I don't know how often, you know, you've been asked to make presentations a number of times, I would bet. You know, they ask me, so give the patient perspective, as if there's one perspective. Or give the advocacy perspective, again, as if there's one perspective. So what we've been trying to do is to truly represent either the bigger patient perspective or the bigger advocacy perspective. So we send out surveys ahead of time before we go make the presentation around the questions we feel are important on that topic. And then we present those findings at the presentation. So I think that's one way. We've also been doing surveys of patient preferences as it relates to the trade-off between benefit and toxicity. We did one thing that I just fell in love with. We were approached by a pharmaceutical company to do a brochure on the BRAF mutation. So what they wanted was they wanted the patients to be more comfortable when they were asked to give tissue, that they would know what it was and they wouldn't be frightened. And it was not to have any drug in it. There were 2 companies with drugs that were coming on the market, but it was just about the BRAF mutation. So they came to us and said, would you be willing to? We said yes, if we can co-own the materials so that we can send them out too. They said no problem, and we said, and we want to test the materials with patients. And they went, huh, okay. So we developed the brochure, and we spent, I know, 8 hours on the graphic for the MEK pathway. But it was good. So we put that in this trifold brochure along with the 10 questions to ask your physician about the BRAF mutation, and we tested it with melanoma and lung cancer patients. And how we tested it was we sent it to them by email, and then we had a personal interview with each one of them. And they told us to stop it.
That's a quote.
By more than one. Stop it. We are in crisis. We do not need to hear about your science. Please take that out of the materials. 2 of them felt so strongly about it that they printed off our email, they struck through all of the science, and they surface mailed it back to me. So they were quite serious. So we took it to heart. We redid the brochure. We had to go back to the scientists and say, they really don't like your MEK pathway. Which they took very well. I was pleased. And then we retested it with a different group of patients. And the patients said, yes, this is what we need to know. We need to know what's in it for us and what's it going to cost us in time, energy, and pain and suffering. So I think that's a very good way of having the patient voice in the science.
Right, because you are actually the liaison.
That's correct. And many times I think the research advocates are the liaisons and the translators, as Ginny said before, of information to patients.
I have the opportunity to be at many tables, especially in the early detection and translational science communities. And it's very important to me to bring back, when I'm at a meeting, I try to report back to the advocacy community. It's not just about me learning, it's about everybody else learning from that experience. Not everyone can be at AACR or at some of the other meetings, but we have a responsibility, those of us that are here, to do that. So what we've done in Research Advocacy Network is to try to develop programs that will help advocates develop those reports and to really disseminate those results from meetings like this that will actually get to the patient constituency. And so we try to give them the help that, you know, how do you translate a scientific presentation so that it's understandable to a patient and be meaningful. So I think that's very important. You know, what's happening at the science meetings needs to get out, you know, because not everybody reads clinical cancer research. You know, it's not on my, it is on my coffee table, but it's not on my next door neighbors. So, you know. And scientists are more about publications where we're more about results, and we want to know what really happens and what it means for me.
There are so many different ways I think that we can be the patient voice. In organizations like AACR and ASCO that are very professionally oriented, it's so important for us to speak up and be that bridge. There's a new magazine being done by AACR, and a number of us are on the advisory or editorial board for that, and helping to make it more user-friendly for the public, but get good information out there. And then on the other end, when you're looking at just the research community, I think recently I was asked, would a group of patients be willing to do an extra biopsy in a clinical trial? And I said, I can unequivocally say yes, at least the population I represent. Most of us as patients are so anxious to see answers. It's like, take whatever body parts you need, where the researcher might be really hesitant to ask for that extra biopsy that's just for research purposes, because they feel like, oh, that's too invasive, we shouldn't do that. And so often I think we need to speak up and say, these are the things that matter to us. And where you are in your life may make a difference as a patient to what's more important to you. And to the FDA, a 3-month overall survival difference or progression-free survival means something different than it does to the patient who will see their child graduate from college or something in 3 months. And we have to figure out, we have a foot in each camp, and we have to figure out how to help value those things that need to be spoken and put into the mix and get them in there. And how do we go about that to represent various different voices that are, as you said, not one patient voice. That was my frustration as the consumer representative on the FDA. I'm one person, and I guarantee you by the 600 and some emails I got now and then when a meeting was coming up, there was not one united consumer voice. And so it is a challenge to try and pay attention to the community, and when we have that chance to speak up, try to present that broader picture.
And so thanks to all of you, and in particular to Ginny Mason, to Mary Lou Smith, and to Elda Railey for coming together and giving us this opportunity and including me as a research advocate.
Absolutely.